I'll at this point, I'll probably move us on to our next speaker. And let's see how we're going here. So I'd like to introduce at this point Paul Green-Armytage. So Paul has taught the School of Design at Curtin University for 30 years. He developed a research interest in colour. He was awarded his PhD in 2006. He's a past president of our society, of the Colour Society of Australia. He has served on the executive committee of the International Colour Association. He's, of course, presented papers at many conferences in Australia and overseas, and has published articles in leading journals. He's also currently a member of the Colour Literacy Project team. So Paul is going to talk to us about seeing the colours of Joondalup, and maybe start off by correcting my pronunciation. But Paul, thank you very much for taking the time, and we look forward to the talk. Thank you. Just make sure that Paul...
Right, you hearing me now?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Okay, and do I share my screen at this point?
Certainly, if that's what you want to do, yes.
Well, I do.
Let me just make sure that you're... yeah.
So you're getting that now?
Yes, we are.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, whoops, I don't want all these guys. I don't want to give anything. I want to get to the slideshow from the start. Right, good. Okay. So thanks, John, and also thank you, David, for organising this event. I've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to go rather fast, and I'm going to read my script with apologies, because that's the way of making sure that I'm going to cover my ground. So I'm actually going to begin at the end. This is hART, My Neighbourhood, a community art installation devised and coordinated by Adamas for the Joondalup Festival. Joondalup is a major centre about 25 kilometres north of the Perth CBD. Sean collected over 2,000 contributions from local schools and community groups, including the Colour Society. Contributions from schools varied widely as teachers interpreted Sean's idea. One exception was Ocean Reef Primary School, where Sean had direct input. More of that later. For our contribution, we had the support of Lisa Estrano, the Joondalup Arts Officer, and the use of a room in the Joondalup Library, where I ran 2 workshops. We had 3 related aims. First was to produce artworks for Sean's installation. Second was to continue our ongoing exploration of localness. I don't know whether that's a word or not, but I think you can understand what I mean. And third was to road test 2 activities that might be added to the Colour Literacy Project website as suitable for children in primary school. The activity for the first workshop, the exploration of localness, was developed from the ideas of Juliet Albany. Participants were to spend about 30 minutes outside taking photographs with a tablet, focusing on features that were characteristic of the neighbourhood. From their photos, they were to choose a set of 4 that could be arranged in a 2x2 grid. Ideally, the 4 photos were to tell a story or have a common theme. This was to be part of our ongoing series of activities in the WA division with the umbrella title, Walking, Looking, Seeing. The following is part of a short PowerPoint presentation I showed to explain what was required. Juliet guided our first walk back in 2010 during a weekend in her namesake city of Albany on the south coast of WA. That's Juliet with the dog, 4th from the left. Here's a group of 4 photos from that walk, arranged in the 2x2 grid that was the format for this exercise. Juliet places particular emphasis on the role of light and how appearances change depending on time of day, time of year, and the weather. The role of light was also a preoccupation of the painter Claude Monet. Monet produced more than 30 paintings of Rouen Cathedral as he tried to capture the appearance of the facade while that appearance kept changing. It is certainly the case that the best way to really see something is to paint it. But photography can still be a valuable tool if you set out to look closely and use your camera to record what you see. These photos were taken from the window of an apartment we rented for a few days in Paris some years ago. The view was a complete surprise and a great opportunity to record the role of changing light, natural light as well as the street lights. So we had times when the sun was out, when it was in, and as you can see, as it gets darker towards night, and the one on the bottom right was taken in the middle of the night. These photos were a direct response to Juliet's ideas. This is an island in a lake very close to where I live in Western Australia. Noon on a clear day, top left. Low sun later that same day, top right. The next day, it was overcast. So the same view at noon, bottom left. And then 5 minutes later, everything changed as it began to rain. I was heading home. Oh, hang on, I got to record this. So I got wet. But in the interests of science, that bottom picture is important. What I found particularly striking was that the rain had given the surface of the water a texture. So you no longer saw any reflection. In 2019, we had another weekend in Albany and more walks guided by Juliet. She was keen for us to record the same view at different times of day. And sometimes the differences were quite subtle. I mean, look at the color of the water in the harbor, very subtly different, slightly greenish on the right. Last October, my wife and I had a few days in the Stirling Ranges south of Perth and had this view of Mount Trio from outside our cabin. Another opportunity to record the effects of changing light. I actually took more than 50 photos of that view. I got completely out of hand. All these photographs were taken on the same day. Bright sun in the morning, top left, then a mighty rainstorm at noon. Then it cleared up a bit later in the afternoon, bottom left, before becoming overcast again in the evening. I mean, see how the color of the grass changes quite dramatically at different times of day. What you see when you walk and look can depend on what you think you know. Visitors to Cockatoo Island in Sydney Harbour may know that it was once the site of a major shipyard and that the industrial installation has fallen into disrepair. If all they see now is decay, they may miss the textures, patterns, and subtle colors on the structures that survive. The next three sets of photos were taken to show the kind of thing we had in mind for this exercise. Sets of 4 photos taken in the immediate neighborhood, in this case in the front of our house, that had a common theme. So here the theme is shapes and shadows. This is from that park around the lake that you saw a moment ago. We know that leaves are green, but that single word can mask the richness that is there. Not only do greens vary in being more yellowish or bluish, more pale, dark, muted, or vivid, but the leaves themselves vary in texture, are matte or glossy, are more or less transparent. Back to the influence of light. Here, the focus is on how appearances are affected by the direction of the light, how it lights up some parts of the landscape and not others, how it can produce silhouettes, bottom left, and cause some leaves to glow when lit from behind. So that was the introduction, back to the Joondalup Library. About 20 people had registered for each workshop, but less than half turned up on the day. And that was probably because it was extremely hot. It was over 40 degrees Celsius. Nevertheless, we did go for a walk with our tablets. It was too hot for the 10-minute walk to Lake Joondalup. We just walked through the Joondalup Civic Centre and into the nearby Joondalup Central Park. We were out for about half an hour. Back in the library, people posted their images onto my Padlet, which is a kind of electronic pin-up board. This was new technology for most of us, and we had some technical difficulties. Ideally, it would have been possible to comment on the images and make suggestions for groupings, like I could have moved those images around and put them together and so on. The Padlet is actually still live, and some people were able to post their images singly or in groups of 4 at that time or later in the day. So here are some of what I got. This was from Li Ning. This was from Li Ning's daughter, Emma. And this from her other daughter, Amy. Although Emma and Amy both added touches of their own, their initial photographs show that they had connected with the concept, with the exercise. People don't normally take photos concentrating on grass or foliage, but here she's seeing the differences, which was good. This was from Mike Dixon. And this was from Suzanne Pollard. I like the way the pattern of the bark is echoed by the pattern in the shadows. So that was the first workshop. The exercise for the second workshop was a variation on an exercise first conducted with the WA division back in 2018. The task was to capture the color character of a scene in a photograph using a standard format and with just 5 colors. The format was a collage of nesting squares and diamonds in a design that is typical of Victorian tile patterns. Originally, the task was to capture the color character of a painting or a flower in 5 colors and using that format. People worked from postcard reproductions of paintings or prints of the flowers. I provided stencils for the 5 shapes and a collection of colored papers for people to use. Here are people in WA selecting their prints and colored papers and working on their collages. I tried the same exercise working from photos. These I took in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane at the beginning of a previous Colour Society conference. So this was the model for the workshop in Joondalup. Those who had been at the morning workshop could use their own photographs, but for those who came only in the afternoon, I had prints from my own photographs for people to use. These are two views of Lake Joondalup that I had taken on a previous visit. The design on the right was by Barry Mond. The one on the left was by another participant whose name, regrettably, I did not record. So if you are out there, whoever you were, do get in touch so that I can give you proper credit. Thank you. On the left is a detail from a residential area near the Civic Centre. This was by Mike Dixon. On the right is a landscape feature in Joondalup Central Park. That was by Andrew Kim. Following our workshops, Sean decided to try these exercises with students at one of the schools that was participating in his project. This was Ocean Reef Primary School. Rather than use coloured paper, Sean created a template that he installed on the school's iPads so that the students could paste in their photos and select their colours electronically. Tapping the plus at the top brings up the photographs. Students scrolled through their photos and tapped the 4 they wanted. When the photos appeared on the screen, they could be resized and moved to form the 2x2 grid. The next task was to decide which 5 colours would capture the colour character of the scenes. For these, I chose the dark brown of the water, the beige of the path and sunlit rocks, the green of the leaves, and the green of the grass, and the dark grey of the shadows in the foreground. The 5 overlapping shapes can be coloured in turn. The blue dots indicate the shapes that have been selected. Tapping the paintbrush symbol at the top opens up ways of colouring the selected shapes. The slide. Sorry to interrupt,
Paul. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give you a 3-minute warning.
Fine, I'm nearly near at the end. The sliders can be used, but another option is to use the dropper. Tapping that and then touching the surface of a photo picks up the colour from that part of the photo and transfers it to the selected shape. Moving the finger changes the colour, which makes it possible to monitor the changing relationships between the colours when the desired colour appears. Lifting the finger fixes that colour. Here, the largest square has been changed to dark brown and the next layer has been selected. The process was repeated until all layers were the desired colours. All the layers have now been coloured, but it would still be possible to make adjustments by going back and repeating the process for the individual shapes. Sean worked with 4 groups of students, having about 25 students little kids, by the way, in each group. While he was on hand to help them, the students showed a high degree of independence. When they'd finalized their designs, they sent them to Sean. Here are two contributions from years 3 and 4. The one on the left was by Solomon, the one on the right was by Phoenix. The choice of subject matter for their photographs varied greatly, and it was good to see them focus on things that were not obviously photogenic. I like the connection between the painted number and the lemon on the left, and I was struck by the focus on the different grays on the right. That's pretty sophisticated stuff for a kid at that level. These are contributions from years 5 and 6 by Alaska on the left and Mitch on the right. If you look closely at the photos on the right, you might notice some blue clothes pegs. Some of the other children include blue clothes pegs in their photos, which suggested a group of friends, a kind of club, the Blue Clothes Peg Club. It was good to see a bit of humor. When he had all their work, Sean arranged the contributions from each group in A0-sized posters. Sean presented the posters to the school, one for each classroom, or cabin as they are called at Ocean Reef Primary School to suit the nautical theme that the school has adopted. This is the poster for cabin 8. All 4 posters are equally striking and show the same degree of variety in the choice of subject matter for the photographs. An aspect of this exercise that I find particularly satisfying is that it involved very little teaching, apart from the instructions on what to do and some technical help. It was about observation and making discoveries, looking, seeing, and recording. There were no rules about how colors should be combined, no color theory, no nonsense about 7 contrasts or anything like that. The colors in the squares and diamond designs were the colors the students saw in their photographs. Most of what students learned, they discovered for themselves. All these designs and all artwork submitted by other schools and community groups included what was produced in our 2 workshops in the Joondalup Library, was incorporated in Sean's installation, which is still up if you're in Western Australia. Finally, a promo. Sean will be giving an artist's talk about the project this coming Friday afternoon, March 25th. See you there. Thank you. The end.
Thanks very much, Paul. That was fantastic. That's really inspiring to see how you and Sean managed to bridge that gap between a nuanced observation of color in life and you know, the digital tools that are clearly incredibly engaging and produce those beautiful images. I saw there was a question about the software in the chat that Sean has addressed. And so in the interest of time, I'll probably move on. But really, Paul, thank you very much. That's a wonderful presentation. I think it was just refreshing to look at those images. And clearly, you're very committed to your art and science of color on holiday, taking all those shots of the distant mountain ranges through different times of the day. So thank you very much again. And at this point, I'll probably move on to our final 2 speakers for the